Hey everybody, Cliff Ravenscraft here with another episode of Podcast Answer Man. This is episode number 381, and for those of you who may be new to the show, this is a podcast devoted to helping you take your message, your business, and your life to the next level. And it does not matter if you're brand new to this online content creating world we live in, or if you've been creating content for many years. There's something we can all do to take everything we're doing in life, business, and everywhere to the next level. So thank you for joining me. Anyway, I am excited about today's episode, my friends. Once again, by the way, let me just address this right here and right now. This is the third episode in a row with no music at the front of the show. And this time it is intentional. I just got back from the Platform Conference in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Had an amazing time there. Met so many of you for the very first time. Of course, several of you who are old time now, face-to-face friends that I've known over the years in person that listen to the show. And I've had a tremendous amount of overwhelming positive feedback about the direction of the show recently, which for me, by the way, has been very good, because whenever you change things, whenever you go in a new direction, there's always those folks out there who do not like change, or who like things the way that they were and they wish they would always stay the same. And I must admit, I'm one of those types of people. My friend Father Roderick Von Hogan is doing some things recently that is different than he's ever done before. He's introduced these commercial breaks in the middle of shows that is it's different, and it's not necessarily what I want and stuff like that, but it's his show, and he's exploring new avenues and trying to find a way to mold that into new things and new projects that he's working on, and I get that. And so I realize that I may not be a fan of some of those decisions, but I fully understand why he's making the decision to try new things, and I support him in that, and I still love his content. But there are some people who they see the changes that I've made here and the direction that I'm going, specifically like the last episode, which was, our podcasters narcissists. And it was a whole episode about the things that, some people think about those of us who really feel that we have something valuable to share with the world. And we have a feeling that we're called to something bigger and of even greater influence in the future. And so I had some feedback over the last couple episodes of, man, this is not what I set out for. And I get a couple of those quite frequently. When I say quite frequently, I mean maybe 2 or 3 people per month will leave a comment either on the blog or send me a personal note that says, this isn't necessarily the direction I think you should go with your show, your Podcast Answer Man. And it was just a huge blessing to hear the number of people who told me that the last episode number 380, and the one before that, where both of them are really the kind of shows that I enjoy creating the most, and the ones that have recently prompted the most amount of critical feedback as far as criticism of the decisions and the direction that I seem to be going. But all of that, thankfully, was kind of pushed to the side by the number of people who just in the past week have told me, wow, these most recent episodes have been my favorite. In fact, I've had one person say, Cliff, you know what? I think what you're doing, I'm going to be around for the long haul, but I think you should put that other stuff somewhere else. You got that Pursuing a Balanced Life podcast. Go put that there. I think that's a better place for it. And, for me, I'm going to go there, but I just think that you're really pushing the edge of your branding. And I think that people who come to you and they find you for the very first time, they're just not going to understand it, and they're going to listen to it, and it's not going to be what they expected, and they're going to go and run. And I'll tell you, I soak that information in and I evaluate it. And here's what I will tell you. At the first cocktail party of the opening night of the Platform Conference, I met no less than 5 or 6 people who had met me for the very first time, who had just recently checked out my podcast. They had no idea who I was. Maybe some of them had said that, they'd heard Michael talk about me. They saw, my name pop up from time to time. But when they saw that I was a speaker at a conference that they had invested in that they were going to attend, they wanted to check out and see the online brands. And so I met 5 or 6 people who said, I just listened to your most recent podcast episode. Now, for some of them, they were actually talking about episode 380, and some of them were talking about 381. Because some of them had listened to the most recent episode before I put 381 online. And I was able to determine that by asking them what was the topic that I talked about. And then I asked them, I said, so you're brand new, and this is a podcast about podcasting and what you can do through podcasting, and you didn't find it off-putting that it didn't have a lot of technical... Oh gosh, Cliff, you've got so much content on your site related to that. I really enjoyed your mindset that you're talking about. Really added so much confidence into the direction that I'm heading. And I'll get more into the personal journey side of things at the end of this episode, but I do have some technical things that have come up that I wanted to share with those of you who are more interested in how can I improve my podcast today, Cliff? What can I do? What technology is out there? What news is out there? I know that I know there are those of you who are out there that's what you hope for. And so today I have some things that I want to share with you. First topic of the day is mypodcastreviews.com. Now, a couple episodes back, it's probably been about a few months ago, I talked about there are many different ways and several different services that you can use online so that you can gain access and have an easy way to see all of the written reviews that are left in iTunes, not just from the country which happens to be the country that you're logged into when you look at iTunes, but from all countries around the world. If you're not familiar with this, if you're brand new to podcasting and you just click in and you see what your written reviews are, your ratings and all that stuff when you log into iTunes, if you assume that that's all the written reviews and ratings that you may have, you may be wrong, because if you are in the United States, for example, and somebody who is listening to your show, if they went into their iTunes store and left a written review for you, if they live in Canada, you're not going to see it there in iTunes. If they're in the UK, you're not going to see it there. If they're in Germany, you're not going to see it there. If they're in Hong Kong, you're not going to see it because each store inside of iTunes has its own directory version of your listing. It's all the same information from you there, but when they post reviews, they actually are only seen by other people who are logged into that country. So I talked about the fact that there is a lot of services out there that you can use to get these. And one of the services that I mentioned has been created by my friend Daniel Lewis. He has got a podcast about podcasting over at the Audacity to Podcast. And he created a service at mypodcastreviews.com. And he has developed something that is, I will say, a game changer in this space. It is something that differentiates him. I'm certain that probably other people are going to hear this that have those other services, and they're going to try to follow suit and copy this. But Daniel is definitely on the forefront of trying to make it possible for everybody to get access to what people are saying about your show as a podcaster. And he just added support for Stitcher reviews. I don't know if you know this, but if your show is in Stitcher, there's a possibility that people have been writing you written reviews and giving you ratings inside of Stitcher. And for me, I don't use Stitcher. I would use Stitcher if they quit recompressing my file and making it sound lower at a lower quality. But that's a whole nother story for another time. But the reality is I do not log into my Stitcher page and look at the reviews that are there. I just don't have time for that. But now I was able to go into, I got a video, by the way, an update from Daniel that says, hey, I just want to let you know that I've added Stitcher support, and I want to show you in this video how you can add to your account your Stitcher ID for your show so that you'll automatically be emailed every time somebody sends you or writes you a review inside of Stitcher. So now every week, once a week, I get an email that includes all of my written reviews from any country in the world in iTunes, and also that email includes any written reviews included on Stitcher as well. And I'm going to give you 2 links. I'll put these links in the show notes over at podcastanswerman.com/381. And the first link is podcastanswerman.com/podcast reviews. And by the way, full disclosure, that is an affiliate link. So you could go to mypodcastreviews.com and sign up. And if you sign up for like the $5 a month version or whatever it is for the basic, for one podcast, you could do that. But if you wanted to use my affiliate link, you could go to podcastanswerman.com/podcast reviews. And just know that I do earn a residual commission as a result of that. But anyway, I have a second link related to this. So if you decide to sign up for the service, I encourage you to check out this video that Daniel just set out that talks about how to set up your Stitcher reviews inside of the system. And I created a short URL that makes it easy for that. And again, this link will be in the show notes as well, but it's podcastanswerman.com/Stitcher setup, all one word. So podcastanswerman.com/podcast reviews if you want to use my link to sign up, and then podcastanswerman.com/Stitcher setup if you want to see that video Daniel created to make sure that you're getting all the reviews from the 2 most important directories out there. All right, moving on to the next topic. And I'm probably a little bit late to the game, but 2 weeks ago, just before leaving for Colorado, I had discovered the buzz, if you will, that had been going around related to a brand new podcast, relatively brand new podcast. I think it's probably in its 9th week now, created by NPR. And it is, or This American Life or whatever. I don't understand all that branding over there. But they created this podcast called Serial. And it's not breakfast cereal, but it is like a serial. It's like a serial drama, like television show. If you remember the TV show Lost, I was a huge fan of the TV show Lost. And every week they would tell a portion of this story, and you'd have to wait until the next week, the next episode, for that story to continue. And each episode builds upon itself. Now, for many podcasts out there, actually for most podcasts out there, the idea is that podcasting is episodic content, meaning that it is a series of episodes. And the reality is, though, is you could tune in. This could be actually, I know for a fact that for many of you, this is the first time you've ever heard my voice. This is the first time you've heard Podcast Answer Man. And chances are there are going to be a number of you who this will be your first episode, and you'll just start listening from this point forward. And you may have never heard the prior 380 episodes before this, and it's perfectly fine. Although I would encourage you to go back 2 episodes. Episode 3, or actually 381 prior, no, 379 and 380. You get the idea. But anyway, you don't have to listen to the prior episodes to actually get value out of this episode. If you hear me talk today and I mention something that is a build upon something in the past, I will probably give some kind of, a little bit of a context to share with you so that you don't have to go back and listen to that prior episode. That's what I just did with the My Podcast Reviews, and I re-explained the fact that the directory in iTunes doesn't always show you everything from all the countries. So, but what Serial is doing is they're intentional about the fact that you really want to start with episode 1. And it is a long story that is being revealed over a series of episodes. All right? And it's kind of like reading an audiobook, listening to an audiobook, and every episode is a new chapter. And you wouldn't want to download an audiobook and start with chapter 5, right? So basically at the beginning of each episode, they say, listen, if you're just starting out, you might want to go back and listen to episode 1 and start there. Or at least if they don't say that, they should. And because now that I think about it, they don't say that at the beginning of every episode. But the description in iTunes does. Now, Serial Podcast, what is it? Number 1, it is the most successful podcast as far as the number of listeners, the number of downloads, and things like that. It is the number one podcast in all of iTunes right now. And not only is it the number one podcast in all of iTunes, it is also the first podcast. This is the fastest podcast that has ever gained 5 million. Okay, it is the fastest that any podcast has ever gained 5 million downloads. So there are a total of, if I had to guess, maybe 9 episodes now. I could be off on that number. Anyway, so with only 9 episodes, there have already been a total of over 5 million downloads of all of those episodes. Not like 5 million per episode. That's not the case. But total so far for the number of downloads, 5 million. And it's happened practically overnight. And why is it? Well, it's because of the way there are a couple things about the show. First and foremost, I want to tell you, it is an investigation into a murder mystery, if you will. So it basically and by the way, it is a true story. And this is one of those things that's just a little bit weird about this whole thing, is that it is an investigation of a quote unquote, well, it's not a cold case really, because cold case in my mind is one where they didn't actually think they ever solved anything, and it just went cold. I don't know anything about police work and detective work and stuff like that. Although it's funny how many people who think they're becoming expert investigators by listening to this. But anyway, this woman that is putting this together, she is an investigative reporter, and she is investigating this case that I think happened 15 years ago. Or at least 15 years ago. And what is happening is it's about this guy who is currently in prison, and he was sentenced to a prison sentence he was convicted of murdering his ex-girlfriend. His name is Adnan, all right? And his girlfriend, and Adnan is a guy of, I think he's of Indian descent, and his ex-girlfriend, her name was Hay, I believe, and she is from Asian descent, and I'm pretty sure on all of that, or maybe it's Muslim. Anyway, so Adnan, basically Hay was murdered. Her body was found buried in a shallow grave in Lincoln Park, and I think that's around Baltimore, Maryland, or whatever, about 15 years ago. And Hay and Adnan were high school students. I think they were in their last year of high school together. And it's all this whole serial, if you will, of stories. This whole story is telling you about what the detectives in the court found as evidence back then that led to the arrest and then trial and conviction of Adnan. And why he's in prison for murdering his ex-girlfriend. But the question that is posed in the first episode and every episode since is Adnan really guilty? Is he really guilty? Did he really do it? And in the very first few episodes, you find that the host of the show is giving you this information, and it's very clear that there were some things that just don't add up. And then she brings in experts who actually make it a living of doing, I think it's called the Innocence Project, where they actually help free people who were wrongly convicted of crimes, usually done through DNA, testing today that could, that wasn't available back then. But anyway, brought in people like that and as experts, and even they are not sure, did Adnan do it? And the question is by the end of this, is she going to dig out something that would actually prove his innocence? And if that happens, is there somebody that did it? There's this best friend. His name is Jay, or not best friend at all, but an associate and friend of Adnan at the time, who is Jay, and his testimony, and it's actually Jay's testimony in these phone records that kind of really did Adnan in and got him convicted by the jury. And The reporter is actually today going and finding some of the jurors of the trial who made those decisions. And this thing, I know that I'm sounding like I'm going all over the place. And for those of you who already know the show, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Our heads are swimming with so many details. And well, here's what I can tell you. I have not met anyone who listens to podcasts consistently on a week after week basis. I have not met one person yet who isn't already subscribed to and desperately hooked on this show. I had so many conversations with so many different people while I was in Colorado this past week, and it was just unbelievable. We're all talking about cereal. That was what we were talking about. So for those of you who are living under a rock and you're not yet subscribed to Cereal, I think you should probably go check it out. Start with episode 1 and read the description of it and just take it from there. And what I want to say is this, is I think this is awesome. And why do I think this is awesome? Number one, I think it's an awesome show. It is a great way to tell a narrative story over multiple episodes. I've actually seen people who are kind of even inspired to maybe even try to find a way to bring that kind of narrative story. It's reminiscent of what we had talked about previously with the Startup podcast with Adam Bloomberg. I think is that his name? No, that's not his name. What is his name? The guy that's doing the Startup podcast. And I'll wait for the chat room to put that in there. And Alex Bloomberg is his name. I'm pretty sure. I know his name is Alex. Anyway. But the Startup podcast and Startup podcast is going well as well. I'm still listening to that, and he's got his $1.5 million in funding, and he's created the thing, and he's named it Gimlet Media. Oh my goodness! Anyway, so you're following the story, and Gimlet Media is to actually it's a company, a podcast company that is trying to create this kind of content that is this narrative story that has this wonderful production value and tells stories that are so interesting to so many people. And so Matthew Hinman, by the way, is in the chat room. He says, Cereal is absolutely riveting. And it is. When I first found it, I think it was episode 7, I believe, is where it was at when I first discovered it. And I went back and listened to episode 1, and I listened to all 7 episodes in one day. It was that good. It's that amazing. So go check it out because if you don't, everybody else is going to be talking about it and you're going to be left behind. And I think it's great for a couple other reasons. It's inspiring other people. But here's the deal. People who are listening to this, people who are just, your normal average podcast subscribers, they are becoming so addicted to this. And this podcast, for so many people, is the very first podcast that they are so passionate about that they're trying to get their non-technical, non-podcast listening friends to listen to. So as a result of this and its popularity, it's bringing even greater popularity and exposure to podcasting as a whole. This is great stuff. Anytime podcasting gets more exposure, it's awesome. So that's another thing that's great about it. And what was the other thing that was great about it? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's good stuff. Go check it out, Cereal. If you have not yet started listening to it yet, you will thank me. And you can do so by leaving a comment at podcastanswerman.com/381. That's where you'll find the show notes for this episode. And in fact, what I want to do is that's a perfect segue into my next topic for Podcast Answer Man. This is, again, another technical thing that I can share with you that might be of great interest to you. But I recently made the decision to delete my live fire commenting system off of all of my websites, and I've moved back to the Disqus commenting system. Okay, for those of you who have no commenting system and you've never heard of Livefire and you've never heard of Disqus, let me set this up for you. So here's the deal. When you get a WordPress website, by default, it has a commenting system built into it. And for those of us who are early, old-time bloggers, especially, I started out before there was actually any kind of system like Movable Type or what is that one, TypePad and WordPress. Before all of that, we were hand-coding our own HTML files. Those were the fun days. I'm just kidding, actually. They were not fun days, but we wanted to get our message out into the world. But we didn't have commenting systems. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have Twitter. And I remember services like Blogger coming out and then Movable Type and then all these things. And they started to add these ability for people to leave comments. And again, this is before Facebook. This is before MySpace. And people could leave comments, and all of a sudden, it's like this is a whole level of new engagement with people around the world. And so commenting systems came about, and WordPress, when it came to us, it actually had commenting system functionality built in. You just install WordPress, and boom, people can start leaving you comments. You can turn it off if you want, but if you do want those comments, which I do, you could get them right out of the box. Now, the thing is, though, is WordPress, like overnight, it seemed like, became the most popular platform for building a website around the world. And I think that's still the case today in a very big way. And as a result of that, when you have so much market share and you have this, everybody's running the same platform, you've got these spammers, and what they do is they create this content that literally, if you set up a blog today and you get indexed in Google, and you don't have some method of anti-spam protection, you're literally going to get hundreds, if not thousands, of spam comments every single month. And by the way, there are some great tools and plugins that you can use to kind of avoid that. The most popular one is called Akismet, Akismet, I believe. Anyway, Akismet is the most popular one. And you can get a free account if you're not into business, or if you have a business, you can get a paid account, and that helps filter out spam comments off of your site with the built-in system. I personally don't like the built-in system. One of the features that a program like Livefyre and Disqus, which I'll explain in just a moment, it allows you to do is it will allow you to, when you hit reply on a comment, it doesn't just show up on the website, but it also sends an email back to the person who originally wrote you that email. Now, things that I haven't used the built-in WordPress commenting system in years, and so maybe WordPress finally got around to doing that, to where if you hit reply, WordPress will email the person who originally left you the comment, so that they can see that and they can click the link and come back to the site and respond back and forth, and you can have dialogue there. So yes, Walter Johnson says that I spelled it correctly. It's Akismet, AKISMET.com, Akismet.com. Anyway, I have Akismet plugged in, but I don't need it right now because here's the deal. I started out with this system called Disqus, all right? It's kind of like discussion, but it's Disqus, Disqus.com, Disqus.com. And I started out with them when they first launched, and it was good. And it did allow me to, people would get a notification when I replied and stuff like that. And I really didn't have a whole lot of reason to move. I was pretty happy with it. And then Livefyre, LIVEFYRE.com, Livefyre.com came about. And they asked me, Cliff, will you check out our plugin? And I did. And I remember, if you go to gspn.tv/livefyre, LIVEFYRE, gspn.tv/livefyre, I remember the very first episode where we put it on there. My friend Eric Fisher and I were doing social media serenity, and we invited those who were watching us live to leave us comments. And we had a live, real-time interaction in the commenting system. And so basically what happened with Livefyre, when I installed it, people could leave a comment. I could be loaded on the page, and somebody may have left a comment on my blog. I could hit reply and type in my response, and it instantly is there. It doesn't have to refresh the page at all. It was instantly there, and that person could get an email notification and then click the link, come back to my site and write something back. And once they've written something back to me, it's instantly there. It appeared in real time. It was live, interactive. And you could literally have conversations, threaded conversations even, back and forth with multiple people while your page is there. And I've had this happen so many times over the years, and I loved the real time. Well, later, Disqus added this functionality as well. And here's the thing. I want to say this. Livefire.com, the plugin Livefire, has been great to me. Over the years, they have had upgrades and all these different things, and oftentimes their plugin may not have worked. Their newest update may not have worked with something as a result of some configuration in my site. And just a quick email to support@livefire.com, just an email to them. They would go out of their way. They would program code and say, here, drop this in here and it will fix it for you. We'll work on this and make sure that it's in the update. It's going to be here and it's going to work. Over the years, they've been fantastic to me. And so I want to give them full credit for all of that. But I have said goodbye to them. And the reason why is because Michael Hyatt is probably the biggest reason why. Michael Stelzner is probably the second biggest reason why. And the reason I would go to Michael Hyatt's site and I would leave a comment and I look at the aesthetic feel, the look, the appeal of just the layout of the comments, and how it fits and integrates into the site. And Livefire, while it looked professional and everything like that, there are just some design aesthetics that just were on a scale of 1 out of 10 in just purely looks alone. I would have rated Livefire about an 8, maybe even an 8.5. But Disqus, I'd give it a 9.5 or a 9.8. You know, could there be some things that you could do to kind of just make it just pop a little bit more, make it a perfect 10? Yes. But the clear thing for me is that Disqus actually looks more elegant. Now, here's the thing. I like on the Livefire system, you could actually like a comment, just like you do on Facebook. You can say, I like this. And I kind of like that. Over on Disqus, they have a similar feature, but it's voting up or voting down, and it's an up arrow and a down arrow. And by the way, it's not very clear that what you mean when you actually hit the up arrow. It doesn't communicate that as clear, but it's essentially the ability to do the same thing. So here's the thing. I have been kind of just, this is what finally broke the straw for me. There have been a number of times, and I'm talking 80, 90 different times, that somebody will post a comment on my site in the Livefire system. And that comment may have a link back to their own site or something like that. And what will happen is I may not see it right away, but somebody else on the site will see it and they think, that seems a little spammy to me. And they'll go in and they'll flag it. And by flagging it, it kind of disappears off my site. Now, the thing is if it actually did get posted originally, then what would happen would be I would get an email notification and everything would be fine. But sometimes what would happen is there would be somebody who would put links to their things inside, maybe one or more or 3 or 4 links inside of their comment. And oftentimes those are spam, but sometimes those links are not spam, or sometimes somebody, for whatever reason, immediately, instantaneously gets marked spam. And it goes into this bozo file. I don't know why they call it bozo or pending or whatever. But the reality is Livefire would not email me if the Livefire system marked a comment as spam, it would not email me to tell me that. And so what would happen was I could go in and I could look up, I could go into their moderation panel and I could look up to see if there's anything pending or marked in spam. But I had to remind myself to go do that. And sometimes I would only remember to go do that about once every 30 to 45 days. And there have been a number of comments that it's weeks ago that they wrote their comment, and wow, how powerful it would have been to have that information back then, or at least to acknowledge that they spent so much time writing that comment. And I always felt terrible, and I would write back, I'm so sorry, I just found this comment, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so, the aesthetics and just a bunch of little tiny things, and then this big spam issue. finally, I for the longest time, I've been wanting to move back to Disqus because I've seen it on Michael Hyatt's site. Michael Stelzner, my mastermind group, was talking about it. He's like, yeah, I really like this instead. And so I decided I wanted to move back. And so finally this week, after I returned from the platform conference, I spent a couple hours in podcastanswerman.com and gspn.tv, my podcast network, are both using the comment system, using Disqus now, disqus.com. And also, I am working on figuring out some problems with getting it installed on balancedlivingweekly.com and virtualassistantpodcast.com. Now, those are not active shows, but they are shows that I used to have the Disqus system on, and then I moved it to Livefire, or at least I took it to maybe even the plain WordPress thing, and now I'm trying to reactivate it, and it's not importing some of the old comments. But if anybody leaves a comment today on any of the sites that I have, it's using Disqus. And also, Tumblr uses Disqus as well. And that's awesome. And I'll get to Tumblr in a little bit. So if you want to check it out, go to podcastanswerman.com/381. Let me know what you think about this episode. Leave me some feedback. I'd love to hear from you. It's a beautiful commenting system. I think it's more elegant looking aesthetically than my Livefire was. And by the way, I looked at, there's a little thing there. I can set what email notifications that I want. And by the way, by default, you get this daily digest. I turned that off today. But you can actually check in there, a little check mark. It says, send me an email notification whenever something is marked as spam. And that's important to me because I want to know that happens, because I realize these things can have a false positive, and I want to make sure that I don't miss anything that you guys are saying. Disqus commenting system, that's what I'm running on my sites now. I'm gonna and it's I've interacted so far before. By the way, even the email notifications are a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. I know that's crazy, but they look good. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to tell you about is Spotify. I just saw the story out there on the TechCrunch RSS feed. I subscribe to the TechCrunch feed for stories related to technology, and they had this little post that kind of caught my attention. It says, hidden in Spotify's app code alongside Uber, plans to launch podcasts and something magic. Anyway, so they had a little screen capture of something inside of the Spotify application, and it says top list, new releases, and then, lo and behold, it says podcasts, and it's got a big little label that says new. So is Spotify going to be adding the ability to subscribe to podcasts? And if so, how awesome is that? There's no official word or release on this, but it seems very evident that Spotify, the Spotify app, could be a pod-catching software or a software to manage your podcast subscriptions in the future. And I would imagine that could be, that would be available. That would be a feature that's in the free service. You don't have to be a paid Spotify subscriber to do that. I hope they're not planning on putting advertisements in our shows if you're streaming them through Spotify. That'll be interesting to figure out. But anyway, anything. Do you know how many people are on Spotify who listen to streaming music all the time? Lots. Do you know how many people who are on Spotify who don't yet know about podcasts? There's probably a few, and I think this would be awesome news. So anyway, I hope that this is going to come to light. All right. The next thing that I want to share with you is that yesterday, no, actually in the last episode 380, I told you that I had scheduled some podcast interviews and that I had set up a whole new procedure for myself. That's at the end of the last episode that I had produced. But anyway, yesterday was my first day of blocked interview times. I have 2 more days in the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Anyway, but yesterday I just want to give a shout out to the wonderful people who graciously invited me as a guest to be on their show. So I want to give them a little shout out. I want to say thank you to Grant Baldwin. His podcast is called How Did You Get Into That? And I'll have a link to that show in my show notes. Dane Sanders, he has the Converge podcast. It's about the creativity of business. I'll have a link to that. Heather Bayer, she has a site over at Cottage Blogger, but hers is, I think it's Vacation Rental Success Podcast. So if you happen to have a vacation rental home property, vacation rental properties, then you want to check out her show. Tyler McCart has the Success Edge podcast. It's a Christian focused podcast that talks about faith in the marketplace. And so thank you, Tyler. And also Jeff Goins, the Portfolio Life. Jeff Goins is a good friend of mine, and he invited me to be a guest on his show as well. So those are the first 5 interviews that I've done so far here in November, and I am so excited for the opportunity. The 5 of those shows combined has given me exposure to 5 audiences where a good percentage of those audiences may have never heard of me before, and got to talk about the love of podcasting and what it can do for you, and also got to talk about some other wonderful things as well. So thank you to those folks, and so cool stuff. Let's see here. The next item that I have here to share with you is an article from The Next Web, and it's really just it's pretty much just the title of the article that I want to share with you, but it says 90% of the world's population above the age of 6 will have a mobile phone by 2020. Get that. 90%, 9 out of 10 people above age 6 in the world will have a mobile phone by the year 2020. And I would say that probably almost all of those will be a smartphone that has the ability to listen to a podcast. Folks, 90% of the people walking this planet will have the ability to listen to a podcast by the end of 2020. That is awesome stuff. So, and by the way, if you want, I'll have a link to that article, and you can read that and see that it comes from a very reputable source. All right. And then the next thing I want to share with you, another one, and this is actually, I was looking for this in just a minute ago, but let's just say you want to be a guest on somebody else's show. How do you get booked? First and foremost, you'll probably want to do something that I personally don't like to do myself. And not only do I not like to do it myself, I really don't like it when people do it to me. And it's probably, but the thing is I'm not an interview format podcaster. Do I occasionally do some interviews? Absolutely. But I like to be the one who initiates the request. All right. So if you want to invite me to be a guest on your show, I love getting those invitations. I don't like getting an invitation from you saying this is why you should consider me for your show. I think it's a bit presumptuous on my part. Maybe that's a little crazy, but if I tend to want to interview people who I already feel in my heart that's like, wow, my audience needs to hear from you, or somebody that I know very well and I want to bring onto the show. In fact, in the very near future, I'm going to bring my friend Michael Hyatt back on to talk about his Best Year Ever program that he's getting ready to relaunch this year with some new wonderful updates. So anyway, but here's the deal. Would you like to get booked on more podcasts? Well, I want to give you a link to somebody, and I do not have any affiliate relationship with her. I will not have any kind of commission or anything like that. But I think her, by the way, her name is Jessica Rhodes, and Jessica is doing some amazing things for podcast producers and also people who want to be exposed to podcast audiences. Maybe you're not a podcaster, but you would like to be a guest on people's podcasts as an expert or an authority for your niche to talk about the things that you know a great deal about. Maybe you are a podcaster who has an authority-based or a niche-based podcast or niche-focused podcast, and you want to actually get more exposure for your show and your brand by being interviewed on other people's podcasts. Well, how do you do that? She can connect you because there are a plethora of new interview format podcasts out there. Everybody who wants to do interviews with anybody, or focused interviews, some focused targeted types of people and experts. Anyway, interviewconnections.com. Again, interviewconnections.com is Jessica's business site. She can help you get booked as a guest on other people's shows. And by the way, if you are a podcast producer and you do lots of interviews on your show and you'd like to have somebody help book great guests for your show, she can do that as well. And so go check it out, interviewconnections.com. If you reach out to her, just do me a favor. Tell her you heard about Jessica from Podcast Answer Man or Cliff Ravenscraft. She knows who I am, and she knows that I'm giving her this plug. So go over there, check it out. You can be added to her list of experts, so that she always has this pool of people that she can pull from. She can explain all the details to you. And by the way, talking about, and she is somebody who really takes action. She is somebody who, by the way, I've never hired her, but I know friends who have hired her to book shows. She has actually had some of the interview requests that I have received. They hired her to try to get me as a guest and other people, obviously. But I can tell you what, the way that she's reached out to me to invite me onto their shows, every interaction I have had with her has been such a delightful, pleasant, and professional experience. I mean, it really does make the folks that she does this for seem so professional. It is. If I had an interview format, I'd probably hire Jessica to book all of my interviews for me. She's really great. So and again, this is not something I'm going to earn anything back from. I think she's doing something wonderful. And just so you can see how much of a go-getter she is, she also has, I believe it's interviewconnections.tv, and she's been creating this series of video blog posts, if you will, that give people insight on how you can get your brand, how to get noticed out there, and how to get booked as a guest on other people's shows. So go check it out. Tell her Cliff says hello. All right, so we're 47 minutes into this episode, and I just want to share with you a little bit more about how I started the show. I came back from the Platform Conference. Obviously, in the last couple episodes, I've been sharing that I feel that, I shared that first and foremost, there's been a number of people who I believe that God has kind of been speaking through. And I'm talking about speaking through people who are Christians speaking to me, speaking through people who are not Christians speaking to me, and just people who are completely unrelated to each other. And just randomly, many times I've had this phrase tossed out at me. Cliff, I believe that you are destined to have a far greater impact in the world than you currently already have, which is substantial. But I believe there's something even greater down the road for you. And they tack on, and I believe that it's not going to be related to the work that you do under Podcast Answer Man. I believe that Podcast Answer Man may continue on, and I'm pretty sure it will for many years to come. But there's something else out there that I think that you're meant to do. It extends way beyond technology, consulting, and coaching, and inspiration, and encouragement in this field. You hear this enough, and of course, I feel it in my heart too. When I left my career in insurance, I did not leave to pursue podcasting, consulting, and coaching. I knew that was one of the things that I would do, but I would only do that to support what was really in my heart, which was to create content, not podcast. Some of it would be Podcast Answer Man. It would be content related to, a podcast about podcasting, but really content about life, about faith, about business, about family, about everything. My goal and my mission is to entertain, educate, encourage, and inspire others. And what I've recently discovered is that I actually have some very clear conviction on what that is, what my message in the world is. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to live that out moving forward, but I shared about this in episode 583 of my show called Pursuing a Balanced Life. You can find that, by the way, at matter of fact, I almost was tempted to create a brand new episode 1, just complete brand new relaunch, because, by the way, that episode 583 of podcast or of Pursuing a Balanced Life, the title of it was titled "The Day I Decided to Start Living." All right, the day I decided to start living. And by the way, that day that I decided to start living was back on November 14th, 2014. That was 6 days ago. And if you want to learn what I meant by that statement, I mean, was I alive before? Have I been living? That's a question I would actually pose to you. And if you want to hear my thoughts on that, guess what? Episode 583 of Pursuing a Balanced Life. You can get there. There's a direct URL. It's gspn.tv/PABL583. But I knew that this was the beginning of what might be the a brand new start for this particular podcast. So I created an even easier shortcut to remember. gspn.tv/start here. Because I have a feeling that what I shared in episode 583 of Pursuing a Balanced Life is the beginning of the next season of my life. And probably what will be the most exciting season of my life. And I'm really excited about it. So if you want to know more about that, go over to gspn.tv/start here. I'll put a link to that in the show notes for this episode. But anyway, here's the situation. I am at this place where I have a feeling of where I want to go, but where do I put it? Do I put it in Podcast Answer Man? Do I put it in Pursuing a Balanced Life? Is Pursuing a Balanced Life, is that really the name that should go with what that show is? And by the way, I can tell you right now, I'll share with you, it may seem to everyone that this is a faith-based show or a brand moving forward. Obviously, you guys know me. Even Podcast Answer Man for me has been faith-based because I am a product of my faith. I've never hidden that fact or whatever the case may be. But the reality is every episode of Podcast Answer Man has always been, if it's ever been educational, encouraging, inspirational to you, it's as a result of who I am as who I am, and who I am happens to be a man of faith. But here's the deal. I know that my calling in life has always been to entertain, educate, encourage, and inspire others. But to do what? What do I want to educate you on? What do I want to encourage you in? What do I want to inspire you to do, to take action on? And this phrase, taking things to the next level, has come up quite a bit. That's the name of my studio. This is the Next Level Studio. But there has been this phrase that has been a part of our journey. In fact, I'm going to play for you an audio clip. This is from the opening music, the intro to Family from the Heart. I'm going to play it for you and let you hear how we had been using or opening the show that I do with my wife every week. Listen to this, and then I'll point out the words that are there.
Welcome to another episode of The Family from the Heart, a podcast that is devoted to giving you a behind-the-scenes look into the lives of the Ravenscraft family, a family that has given up on the ordinary to pursue the lives for which they were created. Now, here are your hosts, Cliff and Stephanie.
Well, there you go, my friends. I'll just let that fade out in the background like it normally would if I was opening that show. But, I came up with that wording as a result. It was inspired by my friend David Foster. And I came up with that wording a long time ago, probably well over a year ago. And I forgot that language was there. And that language I've heard it every week and I never even listened to it. But our family is a family who has decided to give up on the ordinary, to pursue the lives for which we are created or were created. And that's what my brand, that's the direction I lost sight of for which I was created, for which we were created. Now, whether you believe in God or not, that's not really the focus. But the thing is I believe we were all created. However you believe that you were, I believe that we were created, that we're here for purpose, that we're here to do things, that we have the ability to change the world, and that's why we're here. There's a meaning behind why we are here. And whatever gifts, talents, abilities that we have, it's one of the reasons why I'm so compelled to create podcast content. The reason why I do Podcast Answer Man is because I've had an experience in my life where I know by getting behind a microphone and sharing my voice in different podcasts devoted to different topics, I've been able to create content that is making a powerful, positive difference in people's lives. And what I have discovered through this kind of soul-searching process is that what I've helped people to do over all of these years, what I've been drawn to do is not just to make a change in their life, not just to do something in their life. I don't want to just have an influence that causes somebody to do something new. But what I've realized is what really has driven me is when people who have heard the content that we've created and it's made a difference in their lives that has helped them become more of the person that they were created to be. Help wake them up from just coasting through life, or help wake them up from this feeling that that you'll always be debt free, for example. That's something that is a passion of mine and Stephanie's, is that we talked about how we used to be slave to the lender, living paycheck to paycheck. We couldn't afford gas. We oftentimes paid for gas with pennies out of a jar. I mean, it was insane, and we're free from that. We're free from that. Even in the toughest years financially of building this business of 2008 and the first part of 2009, that was the most difficult time of our life, but we were debt free. And even then we were able to have experienced great joy and passion and continue to pursue building the business that has become what it is today. So I want to entertain people. I want to educate on how you can become debt free. I want to educate how you can create a podcast. I want to educate you on how you can become more physically fit, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. But I want to create content. What I'm called to do is to create content that and that first it does entertain people. I want people to kind of their interest to be piqued by my passion and enthusiasm. So I want to entertain. I do want to share something that gives value. I want to educate. I want to encourage people to have hope. I want to encourage people that things can happen, that you can dream big dreams and pursue them and make them happen. And I want to inspire you to take action in whatever area, whatever I happen to be teaching at that moment. I want to inspire you to do something. And why? Because I believe that not only was I created for a great purpose in this life, I have a calling in my life, but I believe each of us are important. I told you last week when we were talking about narcissism, I think we all should have a little bit more sense of what we were created to do, and that we have something of value to offer others. And I want to encourage people every day to become more of the person that we were created, to live the life for which we were created. So I have no idea how I'm going to develop that into my branding into the future. I did not even realize how deeply embedded it was into Family from the Heart. I heard that's been in the front of every episode of Family from the Heart for a long time. And it came to for the lives for which we were created. That became crystal clear while I was in Colorado this week, and it's pretty exciting stuff. And so that, my friends, is going to have a massive impact and influence on the future of Podcast Answer Man and the content that I'm creating here. It's going to have a massive impact, positive impact on the clarity of what we're going to do, my wife and I, with Family from the Heart. It's going to have a massive impact on what I'm doing currently with pursuing a balanced life, and whether or not that gets transitioned into something with a different name, or if it continues on with the same name. But a way to communicate it in a way that makes a whole lot more sense than what I'm currently doing. Everything's still a little nebulous, but what I'm sharing with you is this serialized journey, this narrative story of my life, my branding over these last 308. I've had the serial podcast, only it's not about what I've done, but you get the idea. So I encourage you to stay tuned to Podcast Answer Man, because I don't know what's on the horizon, but I'm going to keep sharing my journey. And for those of you who have really enjoyed the direction Podcast Answer Man has been heading, I'm going to continue to head in this direction. For those of you who despise it, there are other podcasts about podcasting out there, and I'm cool with that. But I hope that I hope that many of you will continue to join me on this journey. And I'll just leave it at that, because some exciting things are yet to come. And just real quickly, I want to let you know that I am going to be getting an account with Patreon for the 3 shows that I've mentioned. I'm going to create a Patreon account for Podcast Answer Man. I'm going to create a Patreon account for Family from the Heart, and I'm going to create a Patreon account for Pursuing a Balanced Life. I don't have those set up today, but it's my goal to have those set up before I come behind the microphone next. So be on the lookout for that. If you don't know what Patreon is, don't worry. I'll talk about that in the next episode of Podcast Answer Man, because by that time I should have everything set up. And also in the next episode, I want to talk about my journaling practices. I've been using a brand new it's an old program, but I've been using it in a new way for me. I'm going to talk about the Day One app. Go to dayoneapp.com. And I'm going to talk about in the next episode of Podcast Answer Man about how I've been using it to journal on a daily basis and how that's helping me share my life online and build a deeper connection with those who follow me through social media. So I'm going to be sharing that in the next episode. What else am I going to talk about? In the next episode, I'm probably going to talk to you about what revelation I had in Colorado about my mailing list, and how I'm going to be shifting a few of my things about my area of focus and time and attention moving forward in 2015, and how my mailing list is going to be really upgraded to a much higher level. And in fact, if you want to start seeing some of that soon, if you're not already on my mailing list, head over to podcastanswerman.com and sign up for my mailing list in the right-hand side of the menu. Friends, great things are happening. And exciting things are happening, and I hope to be able to continue to bring this to you on a regular basis. I want to say this: next Thursday is Thanksgiving. We've got a friend from Belgium that's staying with us right now, a listener of our podcast we've known for many years. This is either the 3rd or 4th time that Winnie from Belgium has come to stay with us, and she's here for over a week. And so we'll have guests in. We're hosting Thanksgiving here at our house. So I don't plan on being here live next Thursday, but I know that I took last week off from Podcast Answer Man, and I don't know yet that whether or not I'm going to take next week off. But I may be back in 2 weeks. But here's the thing: the week after that, I'm in Orlando with my family, Universal Studios for 2 days and Disney World for 4 days. My daughter, Megan, who's turning 15 in 4 days, my daughter is dancing in the Christmas Day parade for Disney. She's actually going to be a cast member of Disney for the period of time that she's working on this. And we go down in 2 weeks they filmed that beforehand. I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you that, but anyway, she's going down. We're spending that. So for the next 2 weeks, there technically should not be an episode of Podcast Answer Man. But one of the reasons why I want to create Patreon is because I believe that with some incentive, I can say, you know what, this thing is so important, and there's so many people who love this content every single week that, hey, I want to make it a point when even if I'm going out of town, or even if it's a holiday, maybe I'm not doing it live, but I'm still putting out episodes. And if you are interested in saying, Cliff, I want to help support, I'd love to kick in a buck or two for each episode of Podcast Answer Man that you produce, I would be more than happy to do that. I'll talk more about that in the next episode. And here's what I can tell you. I believe that this will be the URL. I have to figure out things and get it set up, but it's going to be Patreon, Patreon.com/ and I'm hoping to get Podcast Answer Man, all one word. And so if I can get that, then you could go there. And here's what I will tell you. If I get 30 people who sign up for my page, and it's not there yet for those of you who are in the live chat room, but if I get 30 people who sign up as a patron on our Patreon account here for Podcast Answer Man, if I get 30 people who sign up between now and Thanksgiving, I will record an episode either next Wednesday or next Friday, just because I want to continue to create content on a weekly basis, even if it's not necessarily convenient within my schedule. Yeah. So there we go. That's enough. I'm over an hour. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back soon. And how soon may depend on how many people go over to patreon.com/Podcast Answer Man. And if you are not already, that page is not already there and you want to be notified as soon as it is, email me, cliff@podcastanswerman.com. God bless. Until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level.